Okay, so we're going to get right into the banana bread. Now, the first thing I forgot to mention was you do want to sprout and dehydrate your buckwheat. So this is the very first step that you need to do, which is on your handout. And all of the instructions are there. There's a video on how to sprout your and dehydrate your buckwheat. It's really simple. The only thing is, I want to say, when you are sprouting buckwheat, do not use buckwheat that has been sitting on the shelf for a long time. You need to use fresh buckwheat, because what happens is as it sits on the shelf, it becomes dormant and it won't sprout even if you've soaked it. So this is the issue that a lot of my students have. And actually I did an Instagram video about it because I get the same problem too. So you just want to make sure of that. When you get your buckwheat in, if you're going to be using sprouted and dehydrated buckwheat, then sprout a big batch at once and then dehydrate it for future use. Because this, once it's sprouted and dehydrated, it will last up to a year in the freezer. So then you have it all ready to go. Now we're going to be using this as our flour base. It's living, it's sprouted, it's activated. So this is why I love using buckwheat. Now the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to process up all of the dry ingredients. So you want to do this first before adding in your wet ingredients. So we're going to just put all of the dry ingredients into the food processor here, except for our chopped walnuts, because these we're going to add in at the end because we want those chunky walnuts in the bread. So I have some coconut flour that we're adding, some ground flax, psyllium. This is whole psyllium, not psyllium powder. So this is the psyllium husk. Sorry, it's the husk. And then I have some cinnamon and salt. And that's it for our dry ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and process this up. You want to process this up until it reaches a coarse flour. So you'll start to see some ingredients pool up on the bottom. So what you want to do is you just want to take a spatula and just scrape that around, just to make sure that it gets everything. And this is almost done. Okay, so that looks good to me. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. You can see that it looks like a coarse flour. We still have a little bit chunks of buckwheat in there, but that's totally fine. So now we need to add in the rest of the wet ingredients except for our chopped walnuts, because we're going to add that in at the end. So I have some sesame oil here. Now this is cold pressed sesame oil. You don't want to use toasted sesame oil. It's way too potent in flavor. So make sure you get cold pressed. Also, we're just using 1 tablespoon. This is going to help flavor balance and just give some extra fat and umami flavor to the recipe. So don't skip that if you can. Cold pressed sesame oil is full of nutrients. It's good for you. And we're just using the 1 tablespoon. So we have our date paste that we just made. Add that in. And then some vanilla. We're just going to add in a little bit more depth of flavor there. And then we have our bananas. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure these out in grams. So we need 2 cups, which is about 2.5 bananas. But I like to just measure it out in grams just in case. And I have the measurement there on the recipe download for you. It's 325 grams. So all of these gram measurements and conversions that I give you in my courses, these are my own gram conversions. You're not going to find them online. And don't go searching for them online. Please use the ones that I give you. It's how I test my recipes. You know it's going to be totally accurate when you're making them. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and add in now my bananas. So now what we're going to do is we're going to process this up, and you'll see that it starts to get thick, so I'll show you what to do. We're just going to start by processing. Okay, we actually forgot to add one more ingredient, and this is pretty funny because I added ginger actually to the very last test of this recipe. I tested this recipe 5 times before I was 100% happy with it, and I just felt like something was just missing. And I like to have a little pizzazz in my recipes, so that could be through citrus zest. Orange zest would actually work really well in here as well. But in this case, I decided to add ginger and it just worked perfectly. It was exactly what this recipe was missing. So don't skip the ginger. Make sure you get that in there. Okay, so now that we have the ginger, I can go ahead and process this up again. And as you can see, when the food processor starts breaking down the bananas and getting that date paste in there, then it's easier to blend. Okay, so before this processes anymore, I just want to scrape down the sides and make sure it's just getting everything in there. Oh, I can't wait till you try this out. The smell is just so delicious. If you love banana bread, you're going to absolutely love this recipe. Okay, so that looks good to me. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add in our chopped walnuts. And we're going to pulse those in there so that we can have this nice chunky texture in our banana bread. And so I'm just going to mix this around. Just again, make sure it's evenly distributing those walnuts. Okay, so that is good to me. So this is what this now looks like. So this is ready to go. At this point, we're going to add this into our molds and then make our lovely topping. Okay, so let's talk about molds and the molds that we're going to be using in these 2 bread recipes. So I have 2 different sizes here out in front of me. As you can see, they're very different. One is small and one is very large. So for the banana bread, I actually like to use the smaller molds. So we're going to be using these for the banana bread. And then for the lentil bread, we're going to be using one of these larger ones. And I'll talk more about that when we get into the lentil bread recipe. So for the banana bread, we're going to fill these 4 cute little silicone molds. You could use these, but this is actually a pretty big batch. So the first 2 tests, I tried using this entire mold for one big loaf and it just doesn't work. When you're using a dehydrator and working with raw vegan food, you don't want to put anything in the dehydrator that is too thick, because if it takes too long to dehydrate, there's a lot of potential for mold because we're keeping it at a low temperature so that the enzymes and nutrients don't get destroyed. So just keep that in mind. So if you are going to be using a large mold for the banana bread, then make sure you split it between the 2. Okay, so use both and then it'll fill about halfway, and then that's good enough, trust me. So I'm going to be using these cute molds for this recipe. So now we can go ahead and we can start filling this. And you'll see that the batter is very thick now, and that's because the flax and the psyllium have just really thickened it up, and those are acting as our binders. So the water, we're going to dip our hands in there, and so it's going to help the batter not stick to our hands. So I'll just show you when I get to that step. Actually, I should just do that a little bit right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bread batter and fill the molds. And you can see how much moisture is in this bread, how cakey it looks. And I'm just going to go ahead and flatten it out. You have to remember that we need space still for the topping that we're adding on top. So I'm going to actually take some out here. And you're going to use the water on your hands to even it out. And then you'll see that as you're putting it in, you're losing the shape. So you can just bring that back just by doing this. And don't worry about it being too perfect because we're adding that topping on top, right? So that looks good to me. We can start on the next one. Okay, so as you can see, that was really simple. We have our cute little bread loaves here. So now we just have one more component. Now I know you might think, wow, there's a lot of components. There's a lot of things we need to do for this recipe, but trust me, it is all 100% worth it. Wait until you try this recipe. Plus we are using everything from scratch, and I really wanted to add this topping on top because it just brings this banana bread to a whole different level. So don't skip this. Also too, because it's really easy. We just have some chopped walnuts, coconut sugar, and one banana that we're gonna add to the blender. The food processor. You know what I mean. So we're gonna add in our banana. Now, the trick to this is you don't want to over-process this because the banana is gonna start producing a lot of liquid and we don't want it to be super liquidy. So we're just gonna pulse this up. Okay, so that I'm just gonna leave it like that. So this is what it looks like when it's done being pulsed up in the food processor. So I'm just gonna add this on top of the banana bread. So this is very simple. I'm just going to take the topping, I'm just gonna put it directly on top. It doesn't need to be super thick. You don't want it to be really thick anyways, because otherwise it's going to take a long time to dehydrate. Make sure you get it all there. Okay, so that's it. See, that wasn't so bad, and these are gonna be absolutely delicious. I can't wait until you try them. So now what you're gonna do at this point is you're gonna put them onto a dehydrator tray, and you're gonna put them at a temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this is so that we're gonna be able to remove them from the molds. Now when you use a high temperature like 135 Fahrenheit, it actually takes more than a couple hours for the food to heat up to that temperature. So when you're doing raw food at home, you can dehydrate at a higher temperature than 115 Fahrenheit for a few hours, and then you would decrease the temperature. So we're doing that with the banana bread and the lentil bread so that it's gonna be a lot easier to get them out of the molds. So we're gonna put this in the dehydrator at 135 for 2 hours. And then I'm going to show you the next steps. Now, another thing I really want to tell you that's really important is the drying time is all going to depend as well as on your environment. So for example, I was living in Edmonton, Alberta for 10 years, which is far north in Canada, and it's very dry there. My stuff would dehydrate so fast. Now here I'm on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver, BC, where it's a lot more humid at sea level. So it takes a lot longer to dehydrate. So just keep that in mind. If you're living somewhere tropical, it's going to take even longer. And then if you're living somewhere like Arizona, where it's really dry, it's going to take a lot quicker. So once these are done for 2 hours, we're gonna take them out of the mold and then we're gonna put them back in the dehydrator, and then I will tell you and show you what our next steps are.